All right, Jared, welcome to the podcast. I think
Thank
to
you.
start, just tell me a little bit about yourself. You're a firefighter. Tell me
I am.
what that job is like, how you got into it, and just your whole story with the whole thing.
Awesome. So, yep. My name is Jared. I've been a firefighter for almost 18 years now. Been a lieutenant paramedic for almost the last six of that time. Before that, was an engineer for 2 of those years prior to that, and then was a front run paramedic on an ambulance for the fire department for 10 years, 9 to 10 years prior to that. So been in the fire service. It's been my life for the last 18 years. It is not. It's a little bit of a different start than most. A lot of firefighters have some type of inspiration at a younger age, whether it be other family members or just growing up. That's what they wanted to do. I made the decision fairly quick. I am a strong man in my faith, and so as I was going through college, high school into college. Um, I struggled with what I would knew that I would be good at, but also what I wanted to do. So with what I was good at was certainly a lot more of the business side of things, the 9 to 5. Um, did very very well, in high school and in college. Have a very very big passion for sports, which is why we just hit a year yesterday of our sports podcast.
Congratulations.
Very big passion for sports, but just sitting there in my college classes, I always wanted to get into like sports journalism. But here at the local college, they didn't really have a program for that. So it was like, okay, as you're going through your degree, then you can start to kind of venture off into some internships specializing in those particular areas. But until then, you got to go through the boring side of things. So it took one professor, in 2008, 2007, 2008, something like that, to sit there and essentially tell us in class that he wanted us to eat, breathe, and sleep CNN. For me to know that it was not for me.
Mhm.
So sitting in the parking garage that day, I was just praying. I was like, Lord, this is not for me. I don't know what you have in store for me, but this is not for me. So after just taking a period of time to really kind of pray about it, start writing down the things that I wanted to see, there was a gentleman in my church that he just made kind of like a mid-year or midlife career change. He was having a lot more kids, so he just kind of made that change. But I was a lot younger, and just everything fit to kind of what he had. So I literally made like a 2 month decision to sit there and say, okay, this is end of October. Come the end of January, I'm starting the fire academy. So I went through the fire academy EMT school, got all my testing, and within a year and a half of even starting school, I got a job. So yeah, so I've been there for 18 years. Like I said, a lot different inspiration and start than most. But it was exactly where the Lord wanted me to be, and I've been there ever since. I'm a part of the peer support program. I helped start our peer support program there. So now I'm the lead coordinator there for that program with a great team of individuals, and we do a great job really establishing a good culture there of peer support for our department, and obviously in combination with a lot of local departments around us as well. But yeah, so that's a lot about my career and kind of like a shortened down version, if you will, of how I got started and how I am where I am today.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think it, going through. I mean, I've been through college and done all of that stuff, and it can be difficult to decide on what you want to do in college. And I kind of had a similar deal where I just prayed a lot and got the calling to be a doctor, I would say. And I've been on that path ever since.
Wow,
And
that's awesome.
thank you. And it wasn't too long ago. It was only about 2 years ago. So I did do a bit of a pivot. And yeah, I think praying about these sort of things is great. I mean, religious or not, it's a good way to, I don't know, listen to whatever you believe in. I think you'll get an answer. Might not be the answer you
Yeah.
want, but oftentimes I think there's an answer there.
Yeah, there's always going to be an answer there, and and sometimes it's a risk, right? Whenever I made the decision to go to the fire academy and started to tell everybody, my own family and so on, that that's what I was going to do, it was obviously not. I mean, to some degree, was supportive, but at the same time, it was like, where did this come from, right? It was kind of like, just don't see you doing overly well. Like this just hasn't been your path. Like you understand what it takes to be a firefighter. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not as if, it took every ounce of me to go through the fire standards at the time. It didn't take every ounce of me to get through my first year of just understanding, what it is to be a firefighter, the physicality of it, so on, and just, internally making those decisions to sit there and say, okay, Lord, if this is where you want me to be, then I have to, I have to really dive in deep to this, to for them to know that I'm an asset here. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's not as if, the decision seems easy. It's not as if you feel like you're hearing the Lord tell you that it's going to be easy and you're like, Lord, I swear you told me that this is where you wanted me to be and this is what you wanted me to do. But why is this so difficult? But he never promises for it to be easy, but he promises that he's going to be there with you through it.
Yeah.
So,
Oftentimes, the path that we should be on, our calling, is not going to be the easiest path to be on. It's going to challenge us. And I think that's good. I think challenge and overcoming difficulty and adversity is part of what we're supposed to do. And the fire path is certainly a very difficult path. And I would imagine the job is as well, day to day. Tell me a little bit
yeah.
more about the job, like what you see. A lot of people have preconceived notions about what firefighters are and what they do, but what does it look like day to day?
Well, majority of it, we are in a surrounding area here. I mean, and most departments are probably that way here in the surrounding Florida area. Um, we are like 80% medical. So by that I mean medical calls, ambulance calls, vehicle accidents, extrications, things of that nature. Like we get a lot of those fire alarms, things of that nature. We get a lot more of those than we do like actual legit fires.
Hmm.
In With where I work, I'm a lieutenant for the city of Apopka. We have very short response times, which is great. So that essentially means that, and we have a lot of newer construction as well. So, and we have a lot of programs to essentially assist from school all the way up to adult age with fire safety. So you combine those things plus newer construction, better suppression systems, and shorter response times, then you just don't get, the ginormous fires, like you would see other places. We don't have too many big high rises within our city other than, like a couple hotels and, apartments are going up like crazy. So you do have those, but as far as like, massive high rises, things like that, we don't have those in our particular city. So you're 80 something percent medical. So we put a big emphasis on not only training for fire stuff, but for EMS, because that's what we do most of the time. So that is the biggest day to day is running, EMS calls, performing ALS. So that's what we spend a majority of the day. I'm on the busiest truck in the city right now, the busiest engine in the city. And so, we run, anywhere between 8 to 10, 12 calls, bad days, 12 to 15 calls a day. So between that, we also do pre-plans of our businesses so that way we can gather information on those businesses, especially target hazards, which are high occupant, big fire load, businesses, warehouses, things like that. And so that we can come up with a game plan ahead of time. So if we do get, called to those locations, then we have the layout and how we want to attack whatever issue may be. So that's the course of our day. We run a regular work day, like anybody else. We're 24 hours, but our normal work day is anywhere from 8 to 4, 8 to 5. Just like you see the firefighters doing out, at the very beginning of the day, we're cleaning the station, washing trucks, just kind of getting prepared for the day. There's anywhere between 13 to 15 of us at my station, per day. So we'll have a little powwow, as we call it, anywhere between 8:45, 9 o'clock, get everybody together, make sure everybody's doing okay, go over the day, go over our game plan as to who's doing what and where. We have our training center in our first due, so we're there every day, doing some type of training. We have a lot of new guys, so we have probationary books that we have to go through with them. So it's busy. It's a fairly busy day. My day personally doesn't usually end until 8 or 9 o'clock. That's usually when I'm sitting down after we have dinner and shower, where I'm finishing up all my computer work and reports, for the calls and evals for the new guys and so on. So My day generally doesn't end until around the 8 to 9 o'clock hour, but nevertheless, that's kind of like the course of all of our day and what we run the most of. So that's what we see. As we see more emergency medical calls than we do fire calls. It's probably generally 80-20, if you will, 85-15. So that's why we train a lot, on what we would do in the case of a fire, because obviously that's your low frequency, high risk, type of call.
Hmm.
And we're pretty decent when it comes to EMS with the high frequency, calls with that and training to that regard. So, yeah, so that's the course of our day every day. So that's why we train every day to be prepared for those things. We really take pride as a department in being well trained. We're not perfect, but certainly well trained in a lot of areas just to be as proficient as we can.
Yeah. I've heard this from probably most firefighters is it's mostly medical, and I think that's might be the biggest thing people don't realize,
Yeah,
as well as people going into fire academy. And
yeah,
it's really interesting to me because I think the medical stuff, I mean, personally, I do like the medical stuff a lot. And
yeah.
I would imagine it really shapes how you do the job and a lot of the training that you do, just because the medical calls, they can probably weigh down more than the fires sometimes. I mean, if it's a really bad fire, I would imagine that
Yeah, I
that's
mean,
rough. But
but yes, to your point, majority of what we see would be like like on the tragic type calls is that because we run so many EMS, then you certainly, fortunately, they're few and far between, but you certainly experience the trauma of running pediatric calls
mm,
or bad extrication calls. Those happen more often than you want to,
yeah,
for sure. But that would be a majority of the bad tragic calls that we run, are those EMS calls, for sure.
how do you
Yeah,
and the
I
other
I
firefighters
generally
work
tell
through that?
people that if they're trying to get on to the fire department or any of our new guys, as soon as they get hired on, I fortunately during orientation, I think they kind of tell them a little bit more, that look, this is what we run a majority of. You have a lot of individuals, like we have one tower truck right now, we're about to get a second one, and we have one heavy rescue truck. Those are called special ops trucks, specialized operations trucks. So it's not as if there's a million spots to be on those specialized trucks. Me, I'm an engine guy, I like being on the engine.
Mm,
um, and so you have individuals that come in that have a lot of those classes, or that's what they're looking to do, is to be on those trucks. But you kind of have to work your way to getting there. And in doing so, that means, taking those classes, but also you got to kind of, go through the process, which is being on it backwards on an engine for 6 months. And then after you do that, you're going to spend a lot of time as an EMT on an ambulance. Like, I
yeah,
mean, so it gets to a lot of people where they're like, man, this is not for me. Like, I wanted to be on these trucks right away, this, that, and the other. And especially around our area, that's not how it works.
yeah,
So we try to educate, individuals that are coming onto our department that not every department around here is the same, but a majority of them run the same way. Like, you're majority medical, you're going to spend a good amount of time on an ambulance as well. You just got to work your way up the process. Like I said, I was the front run medic at an outlying station, which means a station outside of our main one, for almost 10 years. Barely being able to get. We didn't have backwards firefighters at the time to ride on the engine, so there was no switching people on and off, giving people a break to be off the ambulance, this, that, and the other. So now it's great that we have moved into a more modern day way of doing of running a fire department.
yeah, yeah.
So we have those backwards guys. We have 3-man engines now. We are making everybody become a medic within 3 years of getting hired on. That's of like 3.5 years ago or so.
Mm,
So now we're getting a lot more medic heavy, and you can start switching medics on and off, and making sure that they're not getting burnt out. And so certainly have come a long way to making to adjusting to those things a little bit better.
yeah. Fire is one of those careers where there's a lot of mental and physical stuff that you have to deal with, like you said, the pediatric calls or the MVAs or those sort of things. How do you and your colleagues deal with that, like to make sure that the trauma doesn't get to you?
Well, so on an outside, that's where we, like department wide, that's where we lean on our peer support team, right? So in 2002, we had a very tragic event where one of our firefighters passed away in the line of duty, a very young man, to just a freak accident on, with some equipment at work. It wasn't even necessarily on a call.
Mm.
And that's the only time, in the history of me being there, and for those that have been there for a lot longer than me, that they've ever seen or dealt with anything to that magnitude. So that was a very eye-opening experience to where we needed to move forward and progress more. Also, in taking care of our firemen further, we were more reactive than proactive when it came to being a peer support team. We had a lot of things that were ahead of the game because there was a lot of departments at that time that didn't even have peer support teams, or those trained in critical incident stress management, or things of that nature, chaplains, so on. So after that, we really took a very proactive approach after being reactionary to that
Mm-hmm.
event, to say, okay, we need to really get some stuff set up and ready to go for our guys. God forbid they have to deal with this again. So we have two chaplains now. We also have a licensed clinician on that, we as like a contract, and so she's there for everybody as well. We're really working to set up a more structured peer support team to be there for individuals, and we're part of a program here in Florida called the Behavioral Health Collaborative. And so what that is essentially a group of individuals from departments all over the state that have that are IAFF certified in peer support, that can respond to departments when they have such a tragic event, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
So we had members, and it was different because I've been on those deployments to go to other departments, but it was different having them come to us now.
Yeah.
So they came to us to do, to really sit down with us. And none of us are licensed clinicians by any means, but we have gone through the basic fundamentals of peer support. And
Mm-hmm.
through that, if you ever get to a point where it's beyond the scope of just having these, surface, partially subsurface, conversations with individuals, and they are just going to need more help, then it's like, okay, what resources do you then have after that?
Yeah.
So that's the other thing that we started gathering. Where's the resources available to say, okay, no matter what you may be dealing with, we want to create an umbrella of resources. So that way, whatever it is, whatever is going to be necessary for you as an individual, because not everybody's the same, we have that ability to offer that. So just in our department, we have a therapy dog program. We have a peer mentoring program. We have chaplains. So we have, and then we have our licensed clinicians. So we have a lot of different avenues, whether you're faith-based, not faith-based, doesn't matter. We have a lot of different pieces under our umbrella of peer support. So when you start dealing through these things, we have those resources. And then we obviously then have the connections to the outside resources as well. So if it does go beyond that, if you want to do something that's separate from our department, because that's the biggest fear, right? Is that a lot of individuals think that if it's anything connected to the department, that everybody's going to know.
Mm-hmm.
And although that's not true, because it happened way in the past prior to us really establishing all of this, then they just have this fear.
Mm-hmm.
And we get it and we understand. So that's why it's like, all right, well, for those that do have that issue, then let's be proactive in having outside resources.
Yeah.
On a personal level, for me, obviously being a strong man of my faith, I have a very, very strong circle of confidants that I have had for majority of my life through relationships built within the church.
Mm.
And then obviously, I've been married for the last 11 to my beautiful wife, and she is just a great support system no matter what happens at work. So in having, those relationships in the department, those really strong, spiritual leaders and confidants outside the fire department, and just my own personal relationship with the Lord, that's how I'm able to process through those things. Yeah, the longer that you've been doing the job and the more that you see those things, you become a little bit more desensitized to them, a little bit less emotional attachment to those particular calls. But at the same time, it's like, okay, it's not always necessarily healthy. So you have to just make sure that you're processing through everything the right way. And that's our biggest thing that, from the very beginning, I do a peer support presentation with our new hires on like day 2 of their orientation to just give them the runaround or not runaround, but the run of the mill of what happens and what can happen and how you process it. And to let them know, hey, your first day, you could run a pediatric code.
Mm-hmm.
Your first day, you could run we had a pediatric extrication. We've had a couple of those the last couple of years. So it's like your first day you could do that, and you're going to come back and you're going to be shell shocked. You're not going to necessarily know how to process it.
Mm-hmm.
So we're gonna go through this, and it's not going to be your favorite conversation that you have during orientation. By far, it's not going to be the most fun, but this is important because you are going to see this. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. If you're doing this job for long enough, and how you process through it, because in 20 or 25 years from now, when you decide to retire, if you plan to make a full career out of this, then we want you to be mentally healthy.
Yeah.
Right. Because right now, especially when it comes to first responder suicide is much more than line of duty death.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me at our department, when we started the peer support team years ago, it was for me doing presentations, taking fire officer classes, where it really dawned on me at that point years ago that this was like an epidemic.
Yeah.
That, PTSD and suicide was always more prevalent and put a bigger focus when it comes to military. But it was like, wow, there's not a lot that's going on right now within the realm of first responders, firefighters and so on. And, and they're not the numbers aren't being recorded very well, but you can see it's becoming a problem. And then more and more as individuals, that are, very, that are involved a lot more, within those different programs, the AFF and so on, when they start to actually record things and get the numbers and follow through and gather statistics and so on, you're like, oh my gosh, like this is crazy, how much the everyday life of running these calls, impacts you as a first responder. So we don't take that for granted. And that's why, we do the best that we can to be there for anybody and everybody. It doesn't matter if it's in the middle of the night. Me and a couple of other guys or girls that are a part of our team, we respond to these stations. We call the station officers, find out how they're doing. Have you discussed anything? Have you debriefed with them? But yeah, I've certainly taken off at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning when I get the phone call. Hey, just to let you know, station so-and-so and so-and-so just had a really bad pediatric code or a drowning or an extrication or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, let's go at it. Let's make sure that these, our guys, our girls, these are our people are okay.
Yeah. I think that's great. There's just having all of these support systems, the chaplains, the therapists, and all of the people being able to have your inner circle and just everyone to talk to. I would imagine that in previous decades and such, this just wasn't something that was addressed, and inevitably it still haunted people, and people still have PTSD, first responders, because a pediatric code is a pediatric code no matter who you are. So it's good to hear that more is being done to address this, in that.
Well, the fire department's paramilitary, right? So way back in the day and for many, many years, that's how it was run. So you weren't allowed to have tough feelings. You weren't allowed to deal with things in an emotional way. So there was this, that everybody calls it that way. So it's this suck it up, buttercup, mentality, where keep it to yourself. Nobody wants to hear it if you're struggling and going through a hard time with a call. Like, what you signed up for. This is the nature of the beast, so on.
Yeah, it's that whole, you need to be a man and just be stoic about it.
It was a lot to change that culture, but fortunately with so many departments around the country, and so many different organizations finally realizing that and coming to that mentality, not every department does, but fortunately our upper administration, they bought into it as well. And because that's where it starts, is from the top down. So if they buy into it, then the culture can change, because obviously they make the final decisions for things. Yeah. So fortunately that is our case, is that in seeing the numbers and seeing the impact, going through our own tragic, event a couple of years ago ourselves, they heavily bought into it and are very supportive in all of our endeavors. Peer support was.
Yeah. I think it's really good to see this shift culturally towards like being able to talk about emotions and being able to talk about what's going on in your life and not have it be this stigmatized thing, and also not having it be this thing where you just kind of wallow in your emotions, but a much more thought out method of talking about emotions and working through them and actually learning what is going on inside of your head. Because the issue with the whole stoic, I'm going to go to my cave and just sit there and brood, is that's just you, and it's really hard to process what's going on in your mind if you don't have the proper tools. But being able to be open about it and find what those tools are through conversations is really
Yeah,
a good shift that I think I'm seeing more and more.
for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
In terms of medical, what would you say the most common medical call you go on is, and what is something that people, I guess, should be aware of that they can do to avoid this call, or how should people avoid having to call 911?
Well, so obviously for us, we're here for the people. So, what I say here is not pushing people away from calling 911 for any reason.
Yeah. Well, more so
However,
that
if you
like,
go and what's that?
sorry, more that like not calling, like not having the reason to call 911, like avoiding, I don't know, having a heart attack, avoiding being in an MVA, that sort of thing.
Oh, well, I mean, it's just like anything else, you got to take care of yourself. When we run on these people that have that are having issues, and it's like, okay, we'll take a heart attack, for instance, and we'll sit there and say, well, how long have you been having this kind of chest pain? For a day and a half. And it's like, all right, probably not the greatest of idea
Mm-hmm.
to not, take yourself up to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And so look for the common, sign, like don't go Google searching and become a Google doctor, right?
Mm-hmm.
But obviously it's taking care of yourself. And then when you see those types of things actually become a giant issue, then that's what we're there for. So, if you're having, and I say that only because it just happened to a family member of mine about a month and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
They had a heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they called me from the hospital, it was very, very nonchalant. And they're like, hey, you working today? And I was like, yep. And they're like, okay, well, so I had a heart attack yesterday. And I was like, all right, well, you're calling me. So, and you're talking to me. So obviously you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it took more of our family to convince him to finally take himself up to the hospital. Like he
Mm-hmm.
was just going to do, he's a man, right? So,
Yeah.
he's just like, I can pop some ibuprofen.
Mm-hmm.
I could take this and that,
Suck
and
it up,
deal with
Buttercup.
this chest pain. And it's like, no, that's not how, we should be smart about this, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to anything, if you have, not your common colds or anything like that, but when you start to see things that are very out of the norm. So if you're having, really strong, say difficulty breathing, and the general ways, if you got asthma or COPD or whatever, and you have the general ways that you can deal with whatever issue comes your way and they're not working, then it's like, okay, if you have an ability to take yourself up to the hospital, go for it. But if you don't, then that's what 911 is there for.
Mm-hmm.
You as taxpayers, you pay our salaries. So
Yeah.
that's what we're there for to do. But you certainly don't want to wait. If you see things, especially, like I said, chest pain and heart attacks are the biggest one.
Yeah.
It's like, don't wait. If I'm having some pretty bad chest pain that I haven't had before, like there are some where it's like, I kind of felt this pain before and it was just indigestion, whatever. But maybe it's a little bit worse. And it's like, okay, we'll come there. We'll check you out. We'll even do an EKG.
Mm-hmm.
And after all is said and done, it's still, as long as we're not seeing anything crazy, it's their decision,
Yeah.
whether they want to go to the hospital or not. But they didn't wait, right? They
Mm-hmm.
called, right away. They saw something out of the norm. They called. We were able to come and give them, a little bit of a checkup. And then just, we never tell anybody not to go to the hospital because we're not going to take on that liability. But
Yeah.
we'll at least, tell them, hey, this is what we're seeing. Nothing I would necessarily take you lights and sirens for, but we can certainly take you up to the hospital.
Mm-hmm.
And you tell us what you prefer to do. But we're here. We'll certainly take you. We'll load you up. We'll take good care of you and take you up there.
Yeah. I think that's really important. A lot of people don't want to call 911 because of the ambulance cost and all of the
Yeah.
rest. But if you're having a heart attack or a stroke or you're septic or any of the big things, you do need to call because it's every second counts a lot of the time.
Right.
So, and would you say
Yeah.
heart
I mean,
attacks are
and
the most common, or what would the most common medical call be?
no, I mean, I would say percentage wise, every station is different because every station has a different demographic.
Hmm.
So one station is a little bit more dense. They're smaller coverage area, but they're more dense and they have a lot more highways. So they probably run a lot more of like your minor vehicle accidents because they have a lot more, main roads that come through their first due.
Mm.
And then like my station, we kind of get a mix of everything. We have a larger homeless population in our area, so we do run on the homeless a lot. And we also have a couple of nursing facilities. So between
Mm.
nursing facilities, our homeless population, and then sprinkling in your regular calls, anything from abdominal pain to toe pain, right? I mean,
Yeah.
some of the crazier, ridiculous calls that you could sit there and think of, we run. I mean,
Hmm.
we will always have a job. We will always have a job because everybody looks at emergencies at a different level. And so your toe could be hurting right now and you feel like your toe is about to fall off and you need to call 911. And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, that's your emergency. That's where you feel like, okay, I need help. I need somebody to be there. And that's what you pay our salary for, is to show
Yeah.
up there and check out that toe for you. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Hmm.
And then we have other stations where they have an older demographic. So they do run a lot more legit calls because they have that older population. They're the bigger older population within their first two. So
Hmm.
every station is different because every station has a different demographic.
That makes sense. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, it is always interesting to hear about the I guess minor calls.
Yeah.
What would you say like is a general rule not to call 911 for?
Well, again, it's so hard because like you're not trying to deter people away from calling 911 if they need to,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I would never want to do that either. If you feel like you need to call 911, me personally, I'm not against running the calls. Like I said, I'm on the busiest truck in the city and I enjoy being on the busiest truck in the city. I don't mind running the calls. But if it is the general, like I'm having, pain in my ankle, a pain in my wrist, a pain, something of that nature.
Hmm.
And or I have a runny nose.
Hmm.
We've run on those before. I think I might have twisted my ankle. Like we'll come out to you. You can call 911 for that, and we can come out to you.
Hmm.
But unfortunately, like we're not doctors. We don't have X-ray machines or anything of that nature. So
Hmm.
we just don't have an ability to do anything for you other than take you up to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
And we'll give you great care. We'll splint your ankle, whatever, to take you up there. People complain about headaches, and
Hmm.
it's like, okay, very low percentage could be something crazy, but for just having, a regular migraine headache or whatever that you generally have, again, unfortunately, we don't have anything that we personally in our protocol that we would give you for that pain. We would just give you a nice, solid ride up to the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's your choice. Again, we're never going to not tell you to call 911, but those are things that's like if enough of those calls, which, statewide, and I would imagine even outside of the state of Florida that we get, it does tax, the hospital system because the hospital has to treat you,
Hmm.
right? So when you show up for those particular things, the hospital has to treat you. We'll have, uh, I mean, I had one the other day, and it was like, and we were going to transport them to the hospital. They decided not to go, but we do have abusers of the ambulance system.
Hmm.
Where they will call multiple times a day, 3 or 4 times a day for the same thing. They never, they're discharged right away. There's never any issue with them. And it's like, that's our job. We'll do it. However, again, you've taxed an ambulance that could be running to a heart attack,
Hmm.
right? You've taken that ambulance, away for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours if they have a delayed offload at the hospital.
Hmm.
You've taken them out of service for a while. So again, we would never tell anybody not to call 911, but there's certainly a level of call where it's like, if you have other people, maybe they can take you, or because we're never going to tell you not to go get seen. Maybe visit an urgent care, which we'll recommend to some people. It's just say, if you don't want to go to the hospital, maybe go see an urgent care.
Yeah.
We unfortunately don't take you to urgent care, so maybe you can go to an urgent care. You'll probably get seen faster for this particular event in an urgent care than you will a hospital. So it's our job, we do it, but certainly a lot of those types of calls do tax, our ambulance system and hospital system for sure, because everybody has to get seen. So the long waits and stuff like that at hospitals, you can kind of help that a little bit, by maybe going to an urgent care or seeing your primary doctor or something like that. But again, that's what we're there for, right?
Yeah, this is something I've been
hospitals
interested.
are there for. That's what we're there for.
Yeah, this is something I've been interested in lately, is trying to educate more people about the different levels of the medical system and when to go to each one, because I think it's something that really isn't talked about in like the education system or whatever. And I feel like each level has their problems with this, because on the 911 side, you're probably having people who don't need 911 calling 911, and like you said, maybe being a bit of a tax on the system. But then on the flip side, I do work in an urgent care. We'll have people who should be at the emergency room, but they come into the urgent care,
Sure,
and they just
yeah.
don't know better. And then I'm sure you have the same at the emergency room, where you have someone coming in for like a sprained ankle, and they would be much better off going to the urgent care. So just knowing the different levels of care and being able to know the broad strokes indications.
Because I think the other thing they don't think about is, like, when we're now at a point now where we do what's called, like, we have a pro QA system. So we do like a dual response depending on the level of resources that are needed or the severity of the call, right? And a lot of departments have been doing that for a long period of time, but we just started doing that over the last couple of years. And so now you not only take an ambulance, but you take an engine and an ambulance, right? And so not every one of them that is one of those types of calls, where you get an engine and ambulance response, needs an engine and ambulance response. But that's just how the system goes, right? Dispatch answers your question or asks you your questions, you answer them, and then we get there. And a lot of times, when we get there, the ambulance may just cancel us, on the engine. If we're getting there together, then we'll walk in, they'll be like, "We're good, guys." Just so that way we can release, one unit to be available, within the city. And, exactly to what you said, it's not every call needs to be called 911 for. Like, we are responding to those really serious, bad calls all day long. We're busy doing that all day long. And then you put 2 or 3 ambulances out of service for, situations that don't really require one. We have a lot of individuals that still to this day, that feel like that they can get into a hospital faster by calling 911. That's another problem, is that they'll tell their family members, "Hey, take an ambulance instead of one of the 5 cars that we have here in the driveway where we can drive you to the hospital. Call an ambulance," right? Because you're going to be able to get in faster. And I love, like, telling those individuals when we get there and we hear those conversations, like, "Okay, ma'am, all looks well here. Sir, all looks well here. Nothing we'd reshift their lights and sirens for, but we certainly recommend you going to get seen, by a doctor. So what would you like for us to do?" And then the family members are like, "Oh, go with them. You'll get seen faster." Nope. Actually, let me just debunk that for you right now. That is not the case. You will still go into the ER. You will still get registered. But if they deem that you're able to go sit in a wheelchair or in a chair out in the lobby, if they have triaged you and you are still not up at that high triage area to those that they have in the lobby, or they are sitting on the wall in the ER already, then you're going to sit. And you're going to be out there for a long period of time as well. So it's kind of debunking that as well for individuals to say, "Look, you're not going to get seen any faster, by going in an ambulance." So I think that there's still a lot of people out there that think that. So for those that are listening, especially here in the Florida area, that's not the case. You don't get seen faster unless you have a really bad, issue as to why you're calling 911. But in general, if it's just a regular, run of the mill call, you're not there. You still get triaged the same way as those that walk up, and go into the lobby.
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing I think that is interesting about first responders is the whole shift work dynamic. How would you say are some of the best ways to manage lifestyle and keep balance as a shift worker, especially if you're on nights?
Yeah, so we work 24/48, right?
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately, our call volume compared to other departments, it's up, but there are other departments where it's like an ambulance engine system. They run 20 calls a shift, right? So
Mm-hmm.
for certain, and they're 24 hours shift, they're not going to sleep very well,
Mm-hmm.
if they get much sleep at all, right? Which is why you're given those 2 days to try to recoup, yourself before your next shift. Fortunately, those particular nights don't happen all the time. We may run a ton of calls during the day. Us being the busiest truck in the city, we run with both of our ambulances that are there, so we can certainly be up all night as well.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, it's like, okay, you have to, and this is something that I share in our peer support presentation, is sleep deprivation.
Mm-hmm.
And what sleep deprivation does to your body, men and women separately, they both have their own things, and how important it is. And I tell people, I say, do as I say, not as I do, right? Do as I
Mm-hmm.
preach, not as I do, because I will make sure that that I'm done with everything that I need to do between 9:30 and 10 o'clock, showered, everything, and ready to go upstairs and go to bed. Now, my guys that are younger, which again, I'm one of the older guys, that I'm 40, but a lot of those guys are 15 to 20 years younger than I am.
Mm-hmm.
They'll stay up. They're
Yeah.
still up. 11, 12, watching the movie, this, that, and the other. And some of them may still run all night long. Me,
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing this job for long enough. I've got 2 kids at home. I literally race home from work to take them to school, pick them up from school, all the above. So sleep is certainly important, but I cannot lie. I will get caught up in going upstairs 9:30, 10 o'clock. Now I'm doom scrolling on my phone, and
Mm-hmm.
now here it is 11, 11:30. And I'm like, shoot,
Yeah.
I've been doing this fucking hour and a half now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I got to go to bed. I got to go to bed. And then, of course, 12:30 comes around. We run a call, 2:30, run at 3:30. And I'm like, and then I get home, and my wife's like, how was your night? I was like, well, if I would have went to bed at 9:30, 10
Mm-hmm.
o'clock, by the time I went upstairs and I said goodnight to you, that would have been great. And so now she has a habit when I call her between 9 and 9:30 when she goes to bed, she's like, all right, put your phone down. Like, don't,
Yeah.
don't
Mm-hmm.
scroll anymore. Go to sleep. You don't know how your night's going to go. So you have to, as a new individual, what I preach to them is you have to try to keep yourself on a same schedule, on as much
Mm-hmm.
of a regular schedule as you can. That's number one. So don't detour away from a 1 to 2 hour, one to an hour, I would say an hour to an hour and a half is where the statistics are. An hour to an hour and a half from your normal routine. So if I go to bed at 9:30 here at home, between 9 and 9:30, then I need to be in bed no later than 10:30, 11 o'clock
Mm-hmm.
at the latest when I'm at work.
Yeah.
Try to keep on that same hour to an hour and a half schedule as much as I possibly can. Um, no matter where I'm at. And that will certainly help with, although you're still going to struggle with sleep deprivation because you have one night out of the next 3 where you could be up all night long and you're not sleeping. If you can make the time and create the time to get a little nap or whatever, just catching up on some sleep, it's very, very important for your body to do, because you can sit there and do all the research you want, as I have for my presentations, and the benefits outweigh the cons by every ounce of everything. Sleep deprivation is a huge thing for your body and takes a very, very big impact. So that is the one thing that I tell every individual is I'm very honest with them as to what I do, and just tell them, but this is what the statistics show, so go make sure that you do this.
Yeah.
And this is going to help you long term. Again, I'm here 18 years in. The guys that, spent 14 to 15 years on the line, like myself, and then now all of a sudden they're in administration, they're working 9 to 5, and they go home and they can sleep every night. They tell you it's not any better. Like those 15 years did enough of me that it's not any better.
Mm-hmm.
And the second part of that is, the public loves us, for the most part, especially our department. They love our department. And so especially during the holiday seasons, they love to load us up with sweets and goodies and bad
Mm-hmm.
food, right?
Mm-hmm.
They love to do it. And we love them for it, for sure. But what we tell everybody is, especially for myself, if I know that I'm working out on the regular and I'm also, losing some weight and eating properly and still working out, that I see that my sleep is better.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's cutting out a lot of the bad stuff, that I may eat or do. Well, at the fire department, especially for dinner, we don't generally eat healthy for dinner. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's our important thing to do is to eat as a crew.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple of guys on our shift that cook and do well. Now, obviously, we're more for quantity than we are for quality,
Yeah. Yeah.
because of how many guys that we have. But nevertheless, it's not like last shift was smash burgers and fries, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we have a Dairy Queen in our area, so it was 9 o'clock Dairy Queen, 88-cent blizzards.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not eating overly healthy unless you're to eat your own food.
Yeah.
So you have to have things in moderation, work out, stay away from alcohol. I tell people all the time whenever I'm talking about alcohol in my presentation, I'm not telling you not to go out there and drink or not to go have alcohol in general. It's just moderate it. Don't allow that to be such a big thing because alcohol isn't necessarily great for your system.
Yeah.
So eat well, have healthy environments, work out on the regular, stay away from, the bad drinks. Like for me, my vice is Dr. Pepper or Diet Dr. Pepper. Like I'm a soda guy. Certainly don't drink as much as I used to, but that's my vice, right?
Yeah.
And like after we get done here, it's like, okay, I got a nice cold Diet Dr. Pepper for my lunch, and it's like that's my vice.
Yeah.
I can eat healthy all day, but I gotta have one.
Yeah. When
And
you go in the EMS
alcohol
rooms,
is for other people, so it's like I get that people have a vice. But those are the things that that I always recommend to our individuals, new hires, and so on. This is okay. Again, this is all information that I'm telling you so that 25 years down the road, you are still in decent shape and your body isn't just falling apart at 25 years later.
yeah, it
With
almost seems
sleep
like
deprivation issues and so on.
it seems like it's almost in the same category as the mental health stuff. I would
Yeah.
imagine before it was a similar mindset where eat whatever you want. It's I'll sleep when I die. It's
Yeah.
like I'll just eat the food in the EMS rooms. I'll just live on chips
Oh,
and
yeah.
caffeine and energy drinks and
Uncrustables, baby.
soda.
That's what we live off of.
Oh, those are dangerous.
Oh, my goodness.
I miss those so much. But yeah, taking the time to actually make sure you get good sleep and trying to eat reasonably well is going to make such a big difference, especially in the
Yeah.
long term, like you said, because if you're just slowly chipping away at your health for 15, 20 years, you're going to feel it later in life and it's not going to be great. I mean, I've met so many firefighters who are coming up on retirement and they're just like, yeah, my body is fried. Like I
Yeah.
pretty much ruined it. And I'm sure there's some of that too with all of the heavy lifting and whatnot. But even that, like you said, going to work out, making sure that you're adequately strong to do the job, feeding yourself the right food so that you're building muscle well. All of this stuff can help mitigate against all of that. And just for everyday people too. All of
And
that
you just
advice
have to do it a
applies.
lot more. Like you have to understand the job that you're in. And you have to understand that you're going to deal with sleep deprivation. You're going to understand that, that you're going to deal with, bad food and late nights and, majority of firefighters, I mean, I don't personally, but do like energy drinks.
Mm-hmm.
For me, on occasion, it's like, okay, once every other day or whatever, I just have like an 8 ounce that Red Bull or something like that. But you'll have these guys, these younger guys that drink, 2 Monsters a day, 2 Bangs a day.
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's how they, they process getting through the day. And eventually they're like, I just do it for the taste now. Like it doesn't even do anything for me. Each one of the bangs has 3 cups of coffee worth of caffeine in it. So essentially, if you've had 2, you have had 6 cups of coffees in a day that you're telling me that level of caffeine has not done anything for you, that doesn't keep you up or
Yeah,
anything.
that's wild.
That should be an eye-opening experience.
Yeah,
for
I
you.
mean, I remember back when I worked on the ambulance, I was kind of in that mindset where I would just eat the crap food in the EMS rooms, live on chips, grab like 2 or 3 energy drinks from
Oh, yeah.
the best hospital or whatever, and I didn't feel good, and whenever I did take the time to pack my lunch, pack my dinner, pack food, and just drink water, I felt a lot better, and
Yeah.
that's what I try to do now. I mean, there's days where it doesn't happen, but literally just taking the time
Oh, for
to
sure.
like get one of those big lunch boxes, pack a bunch of food, it helps so much.
What's your
doesn't-
favorite fast food?
That's a tough one. I don't know if this is fast food per se, but the Walmart pre-made boneless wings, where you go up to the
Really?
counter and get them.
Okay.
They're just so cheap. Like you can get a whole like meal with a side for like $5.50, which is really good. I like In-N-Out a lot. We don't have too many up here, so it's kind of a treat when I get it. But I used to eat a lot of fast food. I used to eat a ton of McDonald's,
Okay.
and it again, it's more expensive. It's bad for you, and I've pretty much tried to cut fast food out entirely. But those Walmart ones, like I live 2 minutes away from a Walmart, so it kind
Okay.
of comes in handy for in a pinch if I need a quick dinner, which I try
Yeah.
to cut back on it, but meal prepping has helped a lot with that.
100%. Yeah, and that's a difficult thing sometimes not necessarily difficult, but just time consuming to meal prep, where you're like, ugh. But fortunately, for our lunches, for the most part, we eat leftovers here. My wife and I have certainly, I mean, well, we just got off of a spring break trip, but we're back on the wagon now. But
Yeah.
prior to that, we both very much we work out at the same place, and we take our health very serious. And she's done great. She's been a rock star. So I'm a little bit later into the game, in doing so, but certainly have shown great progress in all of my numbers and everything in doing so. And you just kind of feel a lot better. But for me, it was Chick-fil-A, right? So
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
a giant, I mean, as high, know the people there. I walk
Mm-hmm.
in the door with a couple of other guys from the fire department, and they're like, "Hey, Jared, how's it going?"
Yeah.
And they just turn and look at you like, "By name, bro?
Yeah.
By name?" And it's like, these are my people, right? It's been, like I said, I've lived in this area for, almost 20 something years. And there are people that have worked for 20 something years at Chick-fil-A at these same locations. So it's like, yeah, we know each other, especially more so when I was a single guy, but even after I got married and we lived in this area and we weren't really paying attention to our health all that much, just frequenting Chick-fil-A. And then forget promotional exams. When I'm there, when I have a morning of like 4 hours before I have to go get the kids where I'm studying, right? So I'm studying for all 4 hours, right? Let's go to Chick-fil-A.
Yeah.
I'll go
And their
sit there
breakfast
and,
is
after
so good.
breakfast and and so that's been my vice where like Chick-fil-A was like, all right, if I'm not a McDonald's guy. Like I take the kids there, but I don't ever eat there because like it's bad enough going and eating Chick-fil-A, but McDonald's, Burger King, all that stuff, Wendy's, it would just make me feel like garbage.
Yeah.
And it's good, like especially McDonald's fries. They
Oh,
beat
yeah.
most people's fries. But yeah, so and Chick-fil-A doesn't like to be called fast food. But yeah,
Well,
no, I
I
could
worked
certainly
at
agree with you.
Chick-fil-A
It'll
in high
get you.
school, and it's better than most fast food places. They have
Yeah,
salads, so like if you want to eat healthy at Chick-fil-A, you can.
you can.
You can't do that at McDonald's, but it's uh, most of the time you're going to be getting the Chick-fil-A sandwich or the chicken biscuit
Yeah.
for breakfast, and
But their Cobb salads are not bad, right?
no,
So like
not
I
at all.
have their Cobb salads with regular nuggets, and even with their balsamic vinaigrette dressing, it's only like 540 calories,
Yeah,
total.
they're not bad.
And a little bit more fat when you have like it's sad, right? I'm telling you all this because I know all this because I live at Chick-fil-A. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I can
Well,
tell
I
you the
worked there,
calorie
so
count.
I know every Chick-fil-A everything because I was the same. I worked there and ate there a
So
ton.
bad.
Yeah, and it's good, but anymore I feel like once this is another thing I've noticed. Once you start eating decent food, lean meats and rice and vegetables and fruits and all of this good stuff, you start to have a bad reaction to fast food, and that's why I don't eat
You
it
do.
anymore. Like I used to
It's
eat
the
at
truth.
Taco Bell a lot too. And now I just can't eat Taco Bell. Like I know for a certain fact if I go and eat Taco Bell, I'm gonna feel like shit afterwards. So I
Oh
just
yeah,
don't.
it's like I better run home and just hang out at the house.
So whenever
Oh yeah, for
whenever I
sure.
get the urge, I'm like, do I want
Taco
to
Bell
ruin my
was a
day?
younger one. So like just before I became a firefighter, I was working in the mall, selling shoes for years, right? And so in the mall, Taco Bell, cheapest place in the food court, and so just lived off of Taco Bell. Taco Bell, 3 seconds around the corner. During that time, they had like dollar Taco Tuesdays, things of that nature. And so you lived off of Taco Bell. But yeah, then it's like you don't, and then you go back to Taco Bell, and it's like immediately before you even leave, you're like, get me home now because this is not going to be good.
Yeah. No, I had McDonald's a couple months ago. Just I was visiting my parents and we needed food in a pinch, and I felt so bad for the rest of the day. It's just so greasy and not good, and yeah. Don't eat fast food.
It tastes good going down, that's for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's I mean that's what they control for. They make it as tasty as possible going down with no, they don't heed any of the repercussions of that. So,
No,
yeah.
you're exactly right.
Um, what would you, what is something that you wish more people understood about firefighting? We've talked about the when maybe not to call 911 and what you're actually doing, but are there any other things that you think people should know and like maybe change
About
their
firefighting in
perception?
general.
Yeah, firefighting, firefighters, first responders in general, maybe.
Yeah, we're people too. So we do run on a lot of individuals that just don't respect us in the right way. We understand, for the most part, most of us, anyways, we understand that you're calling us because you're having an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you how many calls that we run on where it's like you called us for help, you wanted us to be there. Excuse me, but you have you or other family members around you decide that you're going to treat us like crap, essentially, or try to tell us what to do.
Mm-hmm.
That's the thing that just always gets to me is we get there and we're like, hey, are you going to do this and this and this? Are you going to take them to this place? Are you going to do this, this, and that? And, or, are you going to take them to this hospital? Well, according to their vitals, where their vitals look at whatever, we're going to really, no, we don't want them to go there. Okay, well, what we're telling you is that we're taking them to this hospital. Like they're in the tank, their vitals are dropping, this, that, and the other. We really need to get them to this hospital and stabilize. And so then now you're sitting there just arguing and fighting with these individuals.
Yeah.
And so we're people too. You called us. You called us to be there, and we're there. And it's obviously understandable if somebody's there and they're not having a great attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you call us at 3:00 in the morning, there are certainly individuals. If it's a call that we deem is not necessarily one to call 911, you woke us up at 3 a.m. Not me necessarily, but there are certainly other individuals that are they're just not having it, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not really not responding to you with the greatest of attitudes, right? And it's like, okay, we can see that you called 911. This is your emergency. We're not necessarily treating you with the greatest respect, so we can certainly understand your frustration. But that's not the norm.
Mm-hmm.
The norm is, we're people too. We do this all day long, and we're the ones that are up all night long, running these calls. You're going to be able to. Whether if we don't take you to the hospital, we're going to leave and you can go back to bed. We're going to leave, go back, and probably get banged out for another call. Yep. And so we're going to be the ones that are up all night long. And so it's certainly a big thing to understand, as far as we are individuals.
Yeah.
The other thing that I would say, and this has to go more to the peer support side, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Can I share this?
Yeah.
Okay. So, having been married for 12 years, here's one thing that I tell all of our new hires is, look, you guys are all young. Majority of you are not married and have no kids and may not for a long period of time. What's important, though, is because of what we see, because of what we go through on the daily, our mindset is, especially with our significant others or our spouses, is they have they don't know what I do. They don't know what I go through on the course of the day. So we come home and it's like, okay, well, you've been gone for 24 hours. Like now you're back home. So now I've got this long honey-do list and this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that it's more, obviously communication within a marriage and relationship, whatever, is extremely important. But nevertheless, especially when it comes to first responders, it's even that extra important because you have to have an understanding on both sides. Number one, you don't know that they are sleeping by themselves in their bed, and they don't know if at 9 or 9:30 when they say goodnight to you, if that's the last time that they're going to say goodnight to you. Mm-hmm. You don't know that. You're not the one sleeping in that bed where you don't understand their mindset.
Yeah.
That's the mindset that they have. You're a one-sided mindset where you're like, okay, this is just my job. They need to understand that. No, that's not the case. They do need to understand that. And that's the other side of it, is that they also need to have an understanding. Your spouse, I have no clue what he's going through on the daily. I have zero clue what calls he ran, how bad they are, this, that, and the other. I have no clue. But nevertheless, I want to try to understand. I want to try to be supportive. If he tells me that he had a bad day and that he needs a couple of hours, he needs a minute, he needs an ability to decompress because of what he saw, I need to work on trying to assist in giving him that, because this isn't an everyday job.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we go through on the daily as a spouse of a first responder, you got to know, like, the support system is just different
Yeah.
because of what you see and what they see and what they go through on the daily.
Yeah.
And yeah, obviously at the very beginning, it's, of a relationship, it's difficult for you to do as a spouse, because you have to kind of work through what that looks like. But that's where communication is important. So a lot of marriages fail, especially within the fire service. And I feel, not having done counseling with the majority of them, but firemen are certainly, to some degree, needy individuals, and then the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that they go through as well, they they automatically feel like, okay, our spouses need to have a very big understanding to this, and they need to leave me be.
Mm-hmm.
It goes both ways.
Yeah.
It goes both ways, and that's why that communication is so key.
Yeah.
Is to say, okay, sweetheart, I know that you don't understand, or I don't understand what it's like for you to lay there, and I need to take that into my perspective.
Yeah.
Is you might live in a fear, which she doesn't, because we've been doing this for long enough, but that for a while they might live in fear that they don't know if that's the last time they're going to talk to us. But at the same time, we can't come home with this mentality, this needy mentality, or this mentality that we're on this higher pedestal because
Mm-hmm.
we are first responders and we've been up all night long. You haven't been up all night long.
Yeah.
You don't know what we do or whatever. I need to have more support. I need to have more ability to do X, Y, and Z because of what I do. That's not going to fly. That's
Yeah.
not going to fly in a healthy relationship. So kind of off a little bit, I believe, of what you were asking, but just kind of felt the need to share that and just kind of our thought. Because for those that are married that are listening to this, or just newer first responders that might be listening to this, it's really important. That is something that I have found and seen in other first responders to be a very, very healthy, successful marriage.
Yeah. These are both, I think, really good things. The first one is almost this idea that I have that the layperson thinks of doctors or first responders as wizards or magicians who just have all of the answers and they can fix anything with a wave of their hand. But that's not the case. They're people, they're humans, they have emotions, they have feelings, and they make mistakes. And you have to be aware of that when you're calling them to help or they're treating you. And at the same time, you do have to understand that they are the authority here. They have the best judgment because they know a
Yeah.
lot of stuff that you don't. And if you're telling someone, hey, they need to go to this hospital, and they're like, well, I think they should just go to this one. This one's better. And you know that you need to take this person to a level 1 with a cath lab because you think they're having a heart attack and this other one might not have a cath lab. And it's hard to explain that, especially in the heat of the moment. And then the other one where you have both sides of the conversation with the spouse if you're in a difficult job. Because I think it is easy to just come home from work and be like, oh, I've had such a long day. Like, you wouldn't understand. Like, just let me be, leave me alone. Like, I need this, that, and the other. But it is important to consider the other side too, where what effect does the difficult job that you work have on your spouse or your partner? Because it's not nothing, it's something. And it's a conversation that you need to have both sides so that you can understand what both sides need and both sides want. Because, yeah, if you're working 24 hours, you probably do need some supportive things that someone who doesn't do that is going to need. But then your spouse is also going to need stuff that a normal spouse wouldn't need.
Yeah, there's got to be that balance. There's got to be that communication, that compromise, that balance. Because it's a hard profession that you're in, but marriage isn't about just you,
Mm-hmm.
and so you have to have those conversations and come to those understandings of that give and take, and so that way they can understand that you are validating their thoughts and their feelings about it. That you're not just pushing them to the side, saying with this entitled mentality that it's all about you, and that you're looking to be in it together, but with that understanding as well, is like, okay, but there is that side though where it's like, but I am working 24 hours, right? But I
Mm-hmm.
am up all night long, and sleep is important, and that affects your everyday mood. And so there does need to be some give and take on my ability to take a rest, or on today, because I was up all night long, the stuff that I was going to try to get done around the house might have to take a little bit of a back seat because I'm going
Yeah.
to need a nap today if you want me to function well the next 2 days,
Yeah.
with the kids and so on and help cook dinner or whatever.
Hmm.
There's got to be that back and forth.
Yeah. It comes down to conversation. And that almost seems like a theme, is just speaking what is going on in your head in a way that is cohesive and makes sense, I suppose, whether it's your emotions or what your treatment you're trying to do or what you're trying to get across. Like, just try to do your best to speak your mind in a calm, collected manner.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Well, Jared, this has been a great conversation. I think a lot of people maybe don't know the ins and outs of first responders, and there's a lot that you guys do that I find really interesting. The medical side is obviously where I'm going, and I think first responders, firefighters, EMTs, paramedics, I mean, you guys are called heroes for a reason. You go out there and do these extremely long shifts, and you are the first responders on oftentimes these tragic or difficult or painful calls, and it takes a lot. So I appreciate you doing what you do, and to everyone
Oh, I
else out there
appreciate that. Thank you.
who does what you do, and paramedics and police and everyone else. So where can people find you? What are you working on? Any projects? You said you have your
Yeah.
podcast.
So we also have so that's kind of how we met, is through these podcast forums.
Mm-hmm.
So I have my own, or not my own, I co-host with my buddy Jeremiah James a sports faith podcast called Chop Talk. So you can find us on YouTube at chop-talk-podcast. Or on any of the other, or like all of the other audio platforms, podcast platforms, you can find us. And then we're also on TikTok at chop.talk.podcast and the number 0. They just do the 0 in for good measure.
Mm-hmm.
And then also on Instagram at chop _ talk _ podcast. And that's where we'll post like our shorts, our Jesus moments. So essentially what we do is we do have a lot of sports conversations. Some will take a little bit longer than others, but for the most part, what we like to do is we start off with our sports segments, and then at the very end, we have just an inspiring moment, our Jesus moment, as we like to call it, where we just share something the Lord might be putting on our heart, or something of that nature. And then even during the week, we like to post, 90-second, just, inspirational clip of something the Lord might be telling us or whatever, or just something we can find encouraging to encourage our listeners with. And so, yeah, so that's kind of how we found one another, but that's what we're working on. We just hit a year yesterday, 37 episodes for the year, and just hit a year yesterday. So we're really excited about what the next year brings, but that's where you can catch me at as well.
Awesome. Yeah, I think what you're doing is great. Put all the links in the descriptions and everything so that people can find you.
Yeah,
Jared.
that'd be great, man. And same,
Yeah.
we'll I'm right back at you. We
Thank you.
really appreciated this time. Obviously doing this for 18 years, this is a passion of mine. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hesitate when it came to talking about the medical side of things and firefighting, because that's obviously a giant passion of mine. And we'll post the same thing. We'll post this interview as well. So we really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this. And we'll tag one another.
Sweet. Awesome. Well, yeah, it was a pleasure talking to you. Good luck
Thanks,
with the
man.
podcast.
I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, likewise. Good luck with your podcast, and good luck with everything else.
Thank you, man. You have a great rest of your day.
You too. Take care.